Kyle Mandy from PWC joins us as we unpack this a little bit more on the tax perspective. Perhaps not too much with regards to tax sort of changes or pronouncements sort of set to be made in this speech as we usually know. But Kyle, surely a hint towards some sort of increase in revenue is going to be necessary here from the minister.
Yeah, there's no doubt that that will be the case. We've already seen with the supplementary budget that penciled in for the next 3 years was 40 billion rands worth of tax increases. The question, of course, is going to be, is that all there'll be, or will there be more? And if that is the case, what form is that going to take? But I think, as you allude to, we don't expect to get any detail in terms of what form those tax increases will take.
Yeah, how much sort of investor confidence or perhaps investor happiness, shall we leave it at that, would it bring to the country if we were indeed to hint towards something like a wealth tax or that solidarity tax? I mean, that seems like one of the most viable options, and yet it is also possibly one of the most hurtful.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly in terms of the wealth taxes, the impression's there that is intended to be nipped in the bud. We don't expect that will see the light of day ultimately. It just is not viable, both in terms of the administrative costs of actually introducing something like that, and particularly compared to the extent of the revenues that will raise. So we don't expect to see anything around wealth taxes. So the solidarity tax, as you suggest, is something that has been alluded to in a number of circles. What is meant by that remains to be seen, although we understand it would essentially be a surcharge from an income tax perspective. But the question would be is on who would that be levied, and how much are we looking to would be expecting to raise insofar as that's concerned. The expectation is it would not raise significant amounts of money, unfortunately, unless we're talking about multiples of billions of rands, then there's no point in messing around with taxes that are not going to move the needle insofar as revenue collections are concerned, but are going to potentially create more damage from a compliance perspective.
Yeah, look, it's going to get a little bit difficult from here on in. We apologize then just for our icon there just loading up on screen. Very quickly though, what are the options then, Kyle? I mean, it just gets harder and harder. And, we should have taken some of these hard decisions a little bit earlier on, of course. But at this point, what options are available to the minister?
Well, I think there's really only one viable option. And that has been what the Commissioner of SARS has been alluding to over the last few weeks. And that is to invest in resourcing and recapacitating SARS, both in terms of technology and human resources with the necessary skills to actually close what is a very significant tax gap in this country. That, in many respects, is the low-hanging fruit, which would make the most sense to go after and collect.
Yeah. Kyle Mandy from PWC, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it.
It's worth adding as well that any additional revenues that are collected in that way in terms of closing the gap have not been factored into Treasury's forecasts to date. So, in effect, if we're able to achieve that, that would go a long way towards collecting those additional revenues that this country so sorely needs at this point in time.
And boy, do we need it. That's certainly for sure. Kyle, appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us, the tax expert then at PwC, Kyle Mandy, joining us to get perhaps a hint of what the tax community might be expecting from the minister.